Welcome to Starlight Talks. I'm here this week speaking to the topic of inspirational porn. And just to be clear, it's not actual porn. So check out autism.com for all the really great stuff we offer. My blog where I write about living on the spectrum. We have Life Map and all these our social groups and support groups on there. We have another social event coming up. We're going to have a movie night, so go sign up for that. Come back next week because I do these talks every Wednesday at 7. So thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, Mom, for joining. This week, I am talking about inspirational porn, and to clarify what that is, it's not actual porn. Inspirational porn is when someone shares something about the disability community with the message of, oh, that's so cool that they did that, and because they did that, it inspires me, and anyone can do anything because of what I saw this person with a disability do. So there's like videos of people asking someone with Down syndrome to dance, or recently I saw a video of a blind person skateboarding and learning a new skateboard trick, and the caption would be like, wow, so inspirational, motivational for everyone since he can do this, and those kind of things. And that can be really hurtful for those of us on the spectrum or those of us with a disability, because it feels like you're treating us less than that. It's not like, oh, great job, this person is really good at skateboarding. It's like, oh, I get inspiration from him that I can do it, because if he can do it, then of course I can do it. And that's not true. He's just a really skilled skateboarder who happens to be blind. He is not an inspiration because he, gets out of bed every day. He's living his life, and it's good to appreciate, that he has it a little bit harder, but it's just the way that we talk about the disability community, as in there's something to learn from, or there's someone I can get inspiration from, is just very hurtful, rather than celebrating their accomplishment as a person in general. It's it's sort of like looking at someone who's sick and going, oh, that person is living their life with cancer, so I can live my life. It's just not an okay way to look at things or say or comment to that person about it. It can be really, really hurtful. And it's used a lot in everyday life, and by parents, by peers, by teachers, by all different things. It's like everything I do can be considered great. You're overcoming autism, instead of, oh, you're a great filmmaker, oh, you're a great writer, oh, you're period. It's like, oh, how did you do that while living with autism? It's like, I'm just worked really hard at that thing. It has nothing to do with having a disability. And so that sort of a message can be really tough for those of us on the spectrum. So I wanted to speak to that topic of inspirational porn. Before I dive deeper, I'd like to remind you that this is interactive, so if anyone has any questions about anything related to the topic of autism, it does not have to be about the topic of today's Starlight Talk. I love to answer your questions. And So yeah, so this topic is about inspirational porn. If you missed what inspirational porn is, I'll cover that again because it's not actual porn. I get that. I don't know what it's called for. Inspirational porn is taking something that someone with a disability does, or someone does, and saying, "Oh, that inspires me because they can do that. Anyone can do that." That sort of things. So, and it can be very harmful. And then says, I think people in general want everyone to act the same. Yeah. And I don't know if it's on purpose, but there's when you are like the majority and you just assume everyone is going to have that same way of experiencing the world, and when they meet someone they don't, it's like they don't know how to interact with that, and it becomes, they can say things kind of hurtful. But even for me when I was younger, before my diagnosis, I assumed everyone thought the way I did and lived the way I did, in this like very painful way of living, and that I just couldn't handle the pain, and I thought I was, a wuss. I don't know how to describe it. I couldn't tolerate things that other people could, when in fact I was actually experiencing the world very differently, and I had to do things differently in order to not be in pain all the time, where I was trying to be like everyone else, and we're like, oh, everyone else can do that, why can't I do it? And it was very frustrating until I figured out that I experienced the world very, very differently. So we have that assumption that everyone thinks the same, feels the same. I think it's really hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's really easy to put yourself maybe in that scenario, but it's like, these are decisions I would make, not the decisions that other person would make, because we process and think so differently from everyone. And so I wanted to explain one of those experiences with having autism. People like to use like the description of like overcoming autism, or it's like when I accomplish something, it could be like, oh, if she can do that with autism, then someone without autism has to have an easier time of accomplishing that, and that's not true. So in that way, it can just be really hurtful to use that kind of way of like looking at someone. And then when it's like even more common things, like, oh, someone with autism just was able to leave their house today, like that inspires me. Like that's just like, it's just so, I don't know, it's just like you can like celebrate that person and be excited for them, but it's different than being like, well, if they could brush their teeth, then I can do blah blah blah. It's like that comparison doesn't, we're not doing it for you, like we're doing it for ourselves. Marilyn says, I understand what you're explaining. It is complicated. Yeah, it is. Let me see what's like the dictionary definition of inspirational porn, because I'm sure there's one. Inspirational porn is the portrayal of people with disabilities as inspiration solely in part on the basis of their disability. This term was coined in 2012 by disability rights activist Stella Young. Oh, cool. So yeah, it's taking someone's disability and drawing inspiration, like, oh, you're living your life with autism, then I can do so much more. And that's just such a weird way of looking at things. I don't know, like movies do those kind of things too, where like the character learns a lesson from the person with the disability, or the person who's sick, or the person, who's different, rather than, that's an actual person with feelings and struggles. They're not a lesson in your life. They're not, inspiration. They're a person living their life just like anyone else. Not that you can't be inspired by someone with autism, but it's like the way that this because like I've gotten messages like from parents and from others on the spectrum, like I've never seen anyone else on the spectrum do what you do, and that inspires me. That's fine. That is totally fine. It's when it's I can do so much more because I see you doing what you're doing with a disability. That's when when it's like looked down upon that they have a disability. It's like, oh, I can do even better than that, or I can do that, what they're doing, and not giving them credit for working hard just like anyone else, and having talents and skills and in different things, and looking at them like a character rather than a person who's whole. And I've talked about that, the looking at someone whole rather than a part of them is their disability, a part of them is a girl, a part of them is their age, because I've had that question, like, is this autism, or is this being a teenager, is this them being a brat, blah blah blah. I'm like, no. They're always autistic, like they're always a teenager, they're always all of these things, and to separate it, just you can't separate them. They're all, so you can't question whether something they're doing is related to autism. It's always going to be. That's what autism is. It affects the way you process the world, and so you have to stop looking at it as these separate parts. So if you're looking at a disability as a part of the person, that is negative. Rather, there's positives that come with almost everything. And so I have been granted very specific gifts because of autism, and I'm really good in certain areas because of autism, and and I struggle in certain areas because of autism. That all comes together. So to look at it as like, oh, this person is I could do better than this person because they have a harder time than me. That's not the way. That's not a good way of looking at it, and it's very hurtful. Let me see if I can pull up some examples for you guys. Because it's used a lot in like memes and in oh, here's a good one. So I found a picture of a kid in a wheelchair playing basketball, and there's a description that says your excuse doesn't matter. So it's like, this kid's able to play basketball, so what's your excuse for not doing blah blah blah. That's a common use, and it's just a picture of someone in a wheelchair. Yeah, so there's a lot of those kind of things out there. Or there's a lot of them that's like erases disability completely. So here's one that says the only disability in life is a bad attitude. No disability exists. It's like, yeah, we got over our disability because we are very positive. No, being positive doesn't erase your disability. I can be as positive as I want. I'm still gonna have autism. I'm still gonna have bad days. I'm still gonna have challenges, and I'm still gonna have really awesome days. So there's a lot of, just like making the disability, like looking down on what a disability is and not wanting it to be there and trying to erase it. You think, well, you don't. So it's like if someone with a disability does something, it's like you can't look at it like. I don't know what that sentence was. I think I'm starting to repeat myself, but yeah, that's what inspirational porn is. So you can add this to your vocabulary and start sharing this information and tell people it's not okay, because it's not as well known as it should be, and it's not a positive way of looking at the disability community or in general. So, or a person. It's good to validate people. It's so it's like really cool that people are accomplishing these things even with a disability. And so definitely validate them, but don't turn them into, if they can do it, I can do it easier. But it's good to have heroes. Like if you have autism and you're looking up to someone else with autism and going, if they can do it, I can do, like, that's okay in a way. But it's like, you have to work hard and do your own, make your way there rather than erasing their disability. They don't, it's like we all have heroes, and being on the spectrum, it's nice to also have heroes on the spectrum. But disabilities don't make people less. Thank you. My mom posted that you guys just ask questions. Yeah, I love interacting with you guys, and thank you, Marilyn, for writing questions or comments. It's very helpful. If anyone has any stories related to this, you can write them. Yeah, it's. I think it's an interesting topic. What I'm talking about. And I think we need to discuss it more. Hi, Dad. Thanks for joining. Yeah. So, okay. I'll define it one more time. So, inspirational porn is looking at someone with a disability and saying something along the lines of, if they can do it, I can do it. It's looking at them as just their disability and not a whole person, and thinking that you should be able to do everything that they can do. So we want to look at people as a whole person and not just their disability in general. We just want to look at everyone as whole people. Yeah. So I guess I'm running out of steam on this topic. Let me see. Oh, last week I didn't do a talk, did I? Because I was at a dentist. The dentist is really hard for me. Doctors and dentists, I have a lot of trauma related to those areas, and so it took a lot out of me to go to the dentist. It has a lot of anxiety around that, and a lot of sensory stuff that takes place, and so I wasn't up to it, and so I'd like to share that with you guys. I have bad days too, and I want you guys to know, because you guys will see me a lot at my best. I try to share that, I still have autism, I still have anxiety, I still have all those things that aren't always fun. And so I try to share that as much as you see me doing my speeches and doing my art and doing autism and all the things I'm doing, that I still have days of recharging, recuperating, and so that's what happened last week. I wasn't up to it.
I have a question.
Did you?
I do, yeah.
Oh. Marilyn says, I'm guilty of doing it thinking that I was encouraging my child. Yeah, that's totally okay. We have to learn. When you know better, you do better, Meredith says, who has inspired you in your life goals, and can you explain how that's different from inspirational porn? It's a really good question. Let's see. People who have inspired me. One of my biggest heroes, I call my star person, was Mr. Walsh, Adam Walsh. He's been on the Starlight Talks. He was my special needs teacher who also has learning disabilities, and he taught me how to learn and taught me so many other things in the process. Go watch that video with him. And so that he really taught me that there was more to life. Like, I didn't even know that I was putting borders up and walls up, and that I could do more and have bigger goals and do. I didn't even know that I was putting boundaries there that didn't need to be there, until he really showed me. And so that he just, I guess, so I went to him with like questions that I didn't really ask other people, and I was very comfortable talking to him when I was very nonverbal, because I have selective mutism. So that's Danny Rady is someone who inspired me. He's on the spectrum. He runs Asperger Experts, and he just had put autism into words that I was able to use to communicate, and seeing him run a business and do all these like executive functioning things that were very tough for me. It was like I didn't see someone, I guess, progressing further along than me until I saw him, and so it was really cool to see, in 5 years and 10 years I could be further along in my progress, not necessarily doing the exact same as him, but it's like I can there's still more. Again, I was putting up boundaries that didn't need to be there, that kind of thing. Where for those of us on the spectrum, I feel like a lot of the world says, no, you can't. And it's a lot of it's intentional, I think, but I remember receiving that message so much. And as much as my mom was like, you can do this, you can do that, I was like getting failing grades, and I was in, people were always correcting my communication skills, and it just was really tough. So to have people who are different doing things and seeing them do these things that you didn't think were possible gives you that inspiration to stop putting boundaries on yourself. Where I saw them as a whole person, not as like Danny Rady is just autistic. Like I saw him as a person with autism who has all the same struggles as me, but is doing more. And it's so like if I'm able to keep progressing and keep trying instead of giving up, I can progress and stop telling myself, this is all I'm going to be able to do. And allowing that, rather than looking at it like, oh, if he can do it, I could do it. Like I saw the work that went into it. And that like there's more to, and I saw like his interest and his disinterest and all of that kind of stuff. And so I was like, do what you love to do, and tell people, no, I don't want to do that. Like I saw like there were so many lessons I got out of it, as it like, speak up more for yourself and those kind of things. Where I think my dog just farted really loud. I'm so sorry. I think farts are funny.
Oh my god, that was fast.
Sorry. Where with inspirational porn, if I were to look at Danny Rady in the way of inspirational porn, it's like, oh, this person with autism is running a business and living independently, so it should be like, then what am I doing sitting on my ass? Like that's not the way I looked at it. I didn't look at it as like I should be doing more. It's like, oh, there's a possibility for me one day to do more than what I'm doing, not like this moment. So Lynn says, no wonder it did not work.
She's talking about when you were, why you canceled. She tried to get on, I think, is what she's referring to.
Meredith says, What do you do when you have commitment and you're having a terrible day from the get-go? Okay, give me a minute to process it. So there's different things. I guess it depends on how terrible the day is. If it's just like it's a sucky day, and it depends on what the commitment is. Where like if it's like I have a sensory overload, I just let that person know. Or if I like extended myself socially, it's like, oh, I don't have the capacity to hang out with you today socially, my social capacity. Or I let them know I have a sensory overload because I'm really open about it. But just letting someone know you're not up to it, and it's okay to cancel. But when I know I have a commitment, normally I try to make sure that I am able to attend, whether that's, spending the day recharging and self-care and all that kind of stuff until the commitment, or knowing that I need to go to bed early, or whatever it is I need to do in order to go to the commitment. If like something unexpected happens, that could, depending on what it is, maybe I'll cancel, maybe I'll go because it will cheer me up to go to the commitment. But like just having that foresight, knowing like if the commitment is something that's tough to do, or even if it's not tough, like if it's something to look forward to, but there's going to be a lot of sensory and it's going to like tire you out, then like having that foresight in the night before or the day of, like doing that self-care, doing whatever you need to do to prepare. But yeah, I've definitely canceled when I needed to. And if you have the right people in your life, the right friends and the right doctors, like they'll understand. And being okay with that, with canceling, with, you know what, today I just can't do it. And then not kicking yourself for canceling. So Meredith says, so Adam was like a mentor of sorts. Oh yeah, he was for a very long time. I actually call him my star person. I don't know if you got Stargirl's one of my favorite books. And so it's a star person based on the book is someone who comes into your life for a short while and changes it for the better. And we're each other's star people. We both have talked about that with each other. And so he made a huge difference in my life and was someone I could go to. He was my middle school, I would say, special ed teacher for 3 years. Yeah, I talk a lot about it. Go watch the Road to Excellence episode, RTE. I think have I done another episode with him? I think just the one. Marilyn says, you helped me tremendously explaining about spoons. Oh yes, spoons. So it's so funny, Marilyn and Meredith. So Meredith, for the commitment thing, go look up spoon theory. That might help you understand that. I've talked about spoons in the past. It's a good one. So Meredith says the relationship with Danny, seeing more of the ins and outs, inspired you, it sounds like. Yes. Oh, Danny Reddy's on. Hi. I like your hat. Yeah. In case y'all don't know, it's the Wilderness Explorer hat from Up, from the Disney movie. Spoons.
Oh my
Good one. Yeah. Thank you for all your questions. This is so nice. So yeah, spoon theory is I'll go into that. Why not?
What?
Spoon theory is a currency, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's so let's say you have like you only have a certain number of spoons each day, and you spend your spoons on different activities, and those with autism often spend more spoons than anyone else, and so by the end of the day they tend to run out. And there are ways to recuperate spoons by doing self-care and stuff like that. So that's why I talk about capacity. Is like you run out of the capacity or you run out of spoons to do different things. And so I also use the example, let's say a neurotypical has 10 spoons, then often someone with autism will only have 5 because they tend to have to spend more on things that those who don't have autism don't have to spend their spoons on, such as like taking a bath or going to the bathroom even, or eating. There's all different things that we have to spend our spoons on that other people don't have to spend as much of their currency on. And there is also a theory that we're able to borrow spoons from the next day, such as if we were to do something like go to a concert or go to Disneyland or go to something like a huge event like Comic-Con, or and so you're like, why is someone with autism able to spend a whole day at Disneyland, but yesterday they weren't able to go to school? And the theory is that they are borrowing spoons from the next day, and that's why that next day they aren't able to get out of bed and their functioning level goes way down. They might lose an ability to communicate as well as they did the day before, and all those kind of things. So that's spoon theory, and it's really helpful to explain what I'm going through. So Marilyn says, I used to push my child until you and Danny explained it to me, and it has helped him. Yeah, there's the loving push, and that is helpful in situations that you're ready for, that you're just a little bit scared of, or you've had trouble with in the past. But there's also not being ready for that situation, and pushing makes it worse. And so understanding spoon theory and listening and that kind of thing, really listening is the big thing. Is when someone says, I can't handle this, with whether it's body language or those actual words, actually listening to that. And one of my favorite stories to tell is I used to fight with my mom about going to school. I had a lot of what is called school refusal. And she was trying to do the loving push. And we made this agreement that I go to school each morning, and if I can't handle it, then she'll pick me up. I can go home early. And every time I called her, she's like, why don't you just stay for one more class, one more period, one more hour, blah, blah, blah. And I always, like, every time I picked up the phone, I felt this fight that was going to happen. And like, no, I need to go home. No, I need to go home now. And then the next day, I was afraid to go to school, because what if she doesn't come pick me up right away? And I really need to go home. And I was going to school less and less. And then I remember one day I called expecting this fight. I'm like, I need to come home right now. And she just went, okay, I'm coming. And then all the fight went out of me, and I was just standing there, and then my brain was going, wait, do I really want to go home right now? And we realized just having an out, having an exit strategy made it easier to stay, made it easier to do more. So like knowing that my mom would allow me to go home when I needed to, that there wasn't going to be a fight, made it easier to do different events that I normally wouldn't have gone to.
It happened with dinner.
Yeah, going out to restaurants, going out to dinner, going to Thanksgiving, Christmases, all those kind of things, birthdays. So Meredith says, I was more thinking since you and Lillian led some events like the 10 things I hate about you, we didn't lead that event. We were guests at that one. But thank you.
Yeah.
We have led different events. I just want to clarify that was Corey's event. Do you ever feel like you can't cancel? I'm familiar with the spoon theory and use it to explain to my daughter's teachers. Also, sometimes I say her needs are similar to an introvert, but 10 times as far as need to recharge. Do you ever feel like I can't cancel? I mean, if it's luckily there's two of us. If I can't go, then she can go. And I don't know if I've ever felt like that I can't cancel. But I definitely make sure that I prepare for those events. What you don't see is like for the 2 or 3 days before, I am not doing anything sensory, and I am doing things like hiking in nature or meditating, or all the things that I drinking lots of water, eating healthy, all those kind of things that to make sure my spoons are full before the event. And then after the event, I am taking care of myself, doing the same things, so that I'm able to do that. Yeah, I sleep, like I just right after the event I'm asleep. So, and the inertia I have huge inertia. So just going for that event is super helpful for me.
Kind of goes to a question that Meredith has later about getting more spoons, which is what you get sometimes by the event.
Anyway, said I had a dental appointment today, took half my spoons. All my spoons are gone after a dental appointment. They're gone. My last dental appointment, I just talked about that. They brought me into the room super early, and I was just sitting there as my anxiety's building. My dad's like, this is great practice to just be in this room so you can calm yourself down. I'm like, this isn't helping. My dad was really good, and then right when he saw me like getting overwhelmed, he's like, just go outside and stim, just go run around outside and come back. And so I went outside. I was running around and flapping like, oh my god. So Meredith says, do you ever feel you gain extra spoons by hanging out with those who really get you? I definitely have a social need that needs to be met, but I don't think I get spoons from that. I think I always lose spoons by socializing. I definitely need validation, and and different kinds of social interaction with people, and those who really get me fulfill my social needs, but I don't think they fill my spoons. I do know that there are extroverts on the spectrum, and they do get spoons from hanging out with people and going to more sensory filled environments. So because there's two different types of sensory. There's hypo and hyper sensitive, and so if you are one of those on the spectrum who needs sensory and needs social interaction in order to get energy, and I have some of those friends, then you will get spoons from that. If you are not one of those, you will lose spoons from that interaction. So the more you know. Meredith says, from my perspective, I think it's a lot of trial and error, prayer, and gut feeling that go into knowing when my daughter is ready for something or she can't handle it or needs to recharge. The better my self-care is, I find the more in touch and okay with accepting what her needs truly are. The hard part is when I detect any kind of social or teacher pressure, finals, etc. But I am learning. Definitely, your spoons are important. If you don't have enough spoons, you don't have enough to give. So if you're not emotionally in check, have enough spoons, have enough, then you can't help anyone and you can't read anyone. The more mentally stable you are, the more spoons you have, the more you will be able to read somebody else. The closer you get to defense mode, lack of spoons, lack of capacity, the less you will be able to read other people, the less you will be able to read yourself, all those kind of things, and you will go into survival mode. And everyone does this, whether you're on the spectrum or not. So if you realize you are not able to read what you are feeling or what your daughter is feeling, go get more spoons. So Meredith says, "Oh, Corey, thank you for clarifying." Yes. What happened?
Jack's got caught on the cord. Are you lit? He got caught on the cord.
Meredith says, "Corey, thanks for clarifying." Yeah, Corey ran the event. Yes, too. I have found that too with the exit strategy. We have liked using the relays. So yeah, like when knowing that you have an exit from an event, that's you have someone to take you home, that someone's going to listen to you, or you're able to get yourself out of there, makes it easier to go to more things and stay longer and do things. Oh, she doesn't want a phone. Maybe a walkie-talkie.
Alex.
Hi, Alex. Thank you for joining. Meredith says, so you feel you gain spoons from being in nature, and when did you begin to prioritize it? Asking questions is your superpower. Thank you. Yes, being in nature is very helpful to my mental health, and I think it's helpful to everyone's mental health. I could be wrong, but I believe it is. I've brought in a few of my friends. I love to do photo shoots, and I've brought in a few of my friends who have high anxiety into nature, and it's very interesting to watch them after a while being in nature, how that anxiety kind of dissipates. And I've gotten pictures of them looking super relaxed, and it's a very rare sight to see that. Yeah, I think nature is very healing, and there's a reason that we want flowers and plants and all that stuff in our house, and that we like looking at the sky and sunsets and going to the beach and all those kind of things. And maybe everyone likes different kind of nature. Some people like lakes, some people like beaches, some people like deserts, some people like woods. But I think nature is very helpful for mental health. So yeah, I like there's a fire trail and a beach trail right near me, and I go walk over there, and I just go sit. And I love the quiet. I love where it's really quiet. I love botanical gardens. There's one really near me. There's a marsh near me, and I love going there and taking photos and like sitting there just in the quiet. And so when I feel like my mental health is not in a great place, I just there was a while where my mental health was just not doing well, and almost every day when I would just go walk down in the trails, and it was very helpful. It made me feel better. So yeah, I do think it does. When did you begin to prioritize it? And I assume you mean spoons. So I want to say that I started doing regular check-ins in how I was feeling when I want to say 13 or 14. There was this, again, going back to Adam Walsh, he teaches a lot of Danny Rady's teachings by another name. If you go watch his video, he talks about special place, moments, all these different things that Danny Rady talks about, how environment's important, and spoons are important. He has his own way of explaining those things, and so I met him when I was like 13. I was in 7th grade, and there was this. He was helping me with all these things, and I didn't really realize it. And so I was in a class with 5 other students, and then there were 3 teachers, and he was one of them. And he took the time to validate me and do deep listening and all those kind of things. And I hadn't really felt listened to in that way before. I was really into books, and he gave me books. He recommended me books. He handed them to me. He wrote little messages, and then we had a journal we wrote back and forth together. And there was this moment where I remember not feeling angry anymore, and it was so consistent how angry I was that I didn't even realize I was angry till that moment where I stopped being angry. And it felt so good. And after that, there was this realization that I needed to work on those areas. And so I started to do regular check-ins with how I am feeling. And it took me a really long time to figure out how I was feeling and what to do about it. But one of the things that I realized that Danny Rady talks about that isn't shared a lot is if you check in with yourself and have no idea what you're feeling, you are not feeling anything good. And if you don't know what your body is telling you, you are in a bad mental health state. And you need to go get spoons, and you need to work on your mental health. And so when I figured that out, that was a life changer. And I did yoga for a while. I tried all these different things. I love meditation. So when I found out I love nature and meditation, and I just started doing those things. I do therapeutic writing, therapeutic painting. I love projects and art. And so when I figured out what worked, I started doing more of those things. And now when my body says I want to dance, or my body says I want to drink water, I do it. Where I used to be like, yeah, I used to not even listen to the signals even when I heard them. And so I would say it was like around 14 where I started trying. I would say it took until maybe I was 19 till it like started. I felt like I was like actually able to listen and understand my body. But I definitely made progress. And Lillian, there was like a little while ago, asked me like, how are you so much further along out of defense mode than me? We started around the same time. I'm like, no, we didn't. I started when I was 13. You started when you were 16 or 17. Because she started with Danny Rady because she didn't have someone like Mr. Walsh to help her. But she's come a long way too. She's figuring it out as well. And so I think it takes a long time to understand your body. And it's mostly, you have to remember to check in with your body and actually pay attention and listen. And I think that's step one, is start doing regular check-ins with yourself. And it can be like right before bed. It can be right in the morning. You can set alarms, and then eventually start doing it all day. And then it's listening to what your body's telling you. I'm trying to scroll down. So your spoons probably last longer. I don't know what that comment was from. Sorry, Dad. Meredith says, very interesting about the spoons and the social needs being different things. That makes sense. You're welcome. Romeo says sexo. Sorry, Romeo, I don't know what you're talking about. Meredith says correct. Phones are something else for her to manage. Justin says, who else is with you? Oh, there's probably you hear my mom talking in the background, right? That's my mom. Hi, thank you for joining.
Hi, Justin.
Randy. Oh yeah. Meredith says relay device sits in a backpack and is similar to walkie-talkie, but can message to a smartphone. Oh, I didn't know that. That's really cool. I had something like that. We had like a phone that could only call 3 numbers when I was like in 3rd grade.
Yeah, the Firefly.
Yeah, the Firefly. It was this little green, weird looking thing.
It's a kid's phone.
Meredith says, I love the water and definitely recharge by being around it, by the way. Oh yeah. I have a friend who loves swimming, and she would go swimming all the time after school, and that really helped her recharge. So, my mom loves seeing the water, not necessarily going in the water. So it's all like about what sense is important to you. If it's sight, if it's smell, if it's touch, and be aware of it. Like if you need to touch the grass, or if you need to look at the grass, smell it, and surround yourself with candles that smell like what you want. Justin says, can you see if your mom and Raul can set up an autism speed dating event sometime?
Definitely think about it.
That's a cool idea. So Meredith says, I have a question about your school you graduated from. I heard a previous talk you talked about your school journey. Even at your favorite school, did you still feel a struggle, or was it pretty easy to get to graduation? I don't know if I want to gossip about the school, so I'm not gonna name the schools that I went to, but I went to, I'm sure you can find it if you really look, though. I'm sure it's, but so I went to a private school that halfway through middle school, because my grades were failing, and the middle school really, I had a counselor who was amazing and was really trying to help me and just couldn't. They just didn't. And so I ended up,
And you weren't diagnosed.
and I wasn't diagnosed yet. So I ended up going to this private school and into this program called Road to Excellence, which doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. It makes me so sad. It is amazing. But that's where I met Adam Walsh. So Mr. Walsh taught me how to learn and all these different things about me. And so I had him for 2 years or 1.5 years, because I had him for all middle school that I was at this private school. And I would say at that time, school, it's never a breeze, but it was like I went from failing grades to A's. Like, I studied really hard. I had, I figured out I can't do work at home. And so I had a period a day that was like a study hall with tutors. And then I had an after school program where I did more homework with teachers on campus. And I went to school at like 7 in the morning and then came home at like 6:30 at night, because it was like a 40-minute bus ride. So super long days, but I came home and I was done. No homework, nothing. And that really worked for me. So that was super nice. And then the school changed, and I felt, so RTE dissolved in high school, and there was a new program that it met all the legal obligations, but it wasn't what it was, and all of like the favorite teachers left, and then I found out there was a film program at the public high school, so I switched to public high school. And for the first month there, they refused to give me any sort of accommodations, even though I was then diagnosed with autism at that time. And so I ended up going back to those failing grades for like a month and a half, maybe, before my parents got involved and got me back into the special ed program. And from there, my grades took off, but it was so much harder, and there were way more tears and way more stress than there was at the other school. Yeah, all my teachers saw me crying at school. So I did graduate high school, and I have friends who did not. Not everyone graduates, and I want to say it is a tough thing to do. And if you have done it, I am so proud of you. And if you haven't, that's totally okay. It's like people scare you into thinking like this is the only path, but I have friends who got their GED and are working and are doing really well. And so like if your mental health is not in the right place and you need to leave school. Like, don't end up I don't want to talk about. Anyway, so mental health is more important than graduating, than grades, than all of those things. And we lose sight of that. So, but yeah, I remember the last day of high school, I was in my special ed class, and which was like a study hall class, and I had finished my last final, and I remember just I started crying because I realized until that moment I didn't think I was going to graduate. That in the back of my mind I was still the kid in middle school with the failing grades who like really didn't think that I was going to do it, and I did it. And that was one of those moments where I saw I was putting boundaries on myself that didn't need to be there. And so that, yeah, I still remember that moment. That was amazing. So, not easy. School's not easy. It was never easy. And I do think it took me longer to do every assignment than it did for most people. And I think when my diagnosis came, I have like zero ability to memorize. So for finals, I studied all year. People crammed. I can't cram. I literally can't. And so I knew that about myself by high school, and I worked really, really hard. Where I think when I was younger, I just didn't know what I needed to do, and I was trying to do flashcards like everyone else 2 weeks before the test, and that doesn't work for me. I didn't know all the information for the test, what was really interesting to me though is like I know how to apply the information, where most of the tests is just memorizing the information. So it's like I learned a lesson from the story. It doesn't mean I memorized every fact in the story, whether it's history or English. But I knew how to apply it, so I could talk about it, and I could explain different things that other people couldn't, but I was failing the tests. So I just think very different. So Meredith says, my daughter is at a private school, so it is similar, and she has some accommodations and a teacher who gets it, but she only can kind of manage a smaller class load. She is done when she gets home too. It is very hard to agree to get to school or to get to school. Yeah, smaller class sizes are way better. I agree. I think for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I always try to sit in the first 2 rows, so I didn't get distracted. I had a note taker so I could just focus. There were a lot of things that I had accommodations for that were really helpful. But yeah, I definitely took a lot of mental health days. And when I learned what a mental health day was, that was really helpful to me, that like today I just need a day off. I can't go with school. It's not a mentally healthy place. And yeah, in the public school, shorter hours felt much longer than the private school hours, where I was home at 6:30. I was getting home. The block system. Oh, the block system's so much better than the every class every day. The period. Is it periods? I don't know. I love the block schedule. which like is confusing at first, but once you understand,
It's like college.
it's like, yeah, it's like, um, yeah, so I would say that sounds like defense mode or just needing mental health days. Just Deborah says happy birthday. Thank you. Yeah, I turned 23 on Monday. Meredith says to agree to absolutely no homework. Oh, yes. Yes. Homework. So homework can just be busy work. So it's just like just studying is helpful. Just like, but I want those points. But I do love projects. Projects are much better than tests for me. I learned so much more from projects. I say if she can and is ready, she will learn it at school. The rest is jumping through hoops. That's good advice about the GED, etc. I did Google what age she could take it. In Arizona, the earliest is 16. Yeah, I believe it's 16 when you're allowed to go a different path. But there's online school, there's so many different options, and some schools let you take some online classes, so some private classes and some public classes. So it's just and there's homeschooling. There's like so many different options, and there's not just one path. And so taking all that kind of stuff into account and figuring out what works for you. It says that's awesome that you could accomplish graduating. I have learned to give tons of space, and my daughter will not study. She just wants to read it once. Studying does suck. There's a fear of failure too. And there's different ways of studying that can be more fun. Like for me, I made videos. So I took the information, put it in a script, made a video. So like turning it into fun, so like projects rather than just flashcards and memorizing it. There's other ways of studying, just like using the information is studying, going to museums, writing essays, whatever is fun for you to use the information, rather than just writing it down a bunch of times because that's boring. And we like things to be fun. If we're interested, we know a lot about something, right? So Meredith says that's awesome about applying it. I find that is the absolute hardest for my daughter, but she gradually can when she's very interested in something. She misunderstands stuff the teacher says and kind of gets stuck and won't ask. So I wish someone would go with her through the day, that she's trusted to untangle stuff. Okay, so here's something that might help her is getting one task at a time, one step at a time. So I always had the teacher write down all the steps, and it had to be written down so I could do one of the steps at a time. So that could be an accommodation, is having everything written down in sequential steps and broken down for her. So she does it. So it's not like write an essay. It's like on this day, do the thesis. On this day, intro paragraph, like that kind of thing. She takes an average 2 days on each at home each week, and they do have modification block schedule, which is getting better than I thought. The school's iPad-based online didn't work for her because she does best when there's accountability and she's in learning space. Awesome. Making videos is a great idea, but thankfully she'd rather take a test any day of the week. Never do a project. Maybe it was video based. All right. Well, I'm way over time. So thank you for all of your questions, Meredith, and everyone else who asked questions and is still here with me. Don't ever do inspirational porn. Yeah, and stay colorful. Bye.